You have successfully joined the webcast. Please stand by. The meeting will begin shortly.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Debbie Royce, AYCDC's Corporate Secretary. I'd like to welcome everyone to this afternoon's meeting. And before we formally begin, I would ask that everyone please mute your line unless you're speaking. As we have our directors joining by video today, we'll do a quick roll call before we get started. Acting Chair Daniel Coomer.
Oh, sorry, here.
Mr. Coomer. Yep, that's okay. Julene Beckford.
Here.
Trinell Gabay.
Here.
Tamara McCaw.
Here.
Gib Vaconi.
Here.
And Deborah Young.
Here.
And then I just want to double check if Drew Gabriel has been able to join or Ethel Tias. Okay, thanks so much. Acting Chair Coomer, you're ready to begin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Debbie. Good afternoon. It's nice to see everyone today and welcome everyone to today's meeting of the Atlantic Yards Community Development Corporation Board. Before we formally begin, I'd like to note for the record that I will be the acting chair for today's meeting. I'd also like to welcome our new director to the board, Trinell Gabay. Ms. Gabay was appointed to the board by Governor Hochul, and we welcome you to today's meeting and look forward to having you join our work on the board. I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Atlantic Yards Community Development Corporation.
Mr. Coomer, you've hit the mute button.
Okay.
Yeah, when you call to order. Okay.
How that happened, but
like Ethel
where did I leave off?
You when you said you'd like to, before we get started. Oh, you're muted again.
I don't know why that's happening. I'm not hitting the mute button.
Okay.
But I'll remind everyone to please mute your video and your phones until you're ready to speak. Also, for the record, I'll ask that if anyone wishes to speak, please be sure to state your name before you begin. I'd also like to note for the record that as authorized by current legislation, this meeting will be conducted by video and teleconference. Also note for the record that the public was given the opportunity to comment on today's agenda by submitting their written comments by 4:30 p.m. yesterday. And for the record, no comments were received from the public. The directors have received meeting materials in advance of today's meeting and are free to ask questions at any time. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I would ask the directors to state whether anyone has any potential conflict of interest with respect to any of today's agenda items. If so, I'd ask you to please make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We'll then be sure that you may recuse yourselves from any discussion or vote that might be related to such items. Hearing none, I'd now like to call on Toby Jayasimi to provide us with the corporate update portion of the agenda. This item is being presented for your information only. No vote will be required. Toby, please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Daniel.
Good
afternoon,
just
directors.
before you get started, I just want to note for the record that Ethel Tias had joined the meeting a little earlier. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Debbie. Thank you, Daniel.
It is just too much. They gave
I
it
apologize for being late. Ethel Tias here.
before everyone else came on.
Thank you, Ethel. And
And
again,
I
thank
see
you to the directors.
Drew Gabriel, I see you now, is also trying to join.
Yes.
I apologize for being late.
Good afternoon,
That's
Drew.
okay.
And Ethel.
And Drew, are you able to turn your camera on?
Yes, just one moment.
I'm going to tell you that, I
Well, good
Toby,
afternoon again, directors.
Yep, go ahead.
Good afternoon again, directors, and thank you for joining today's meeting. Special welcome again to Trinell Gabe, the newest appointee to the AYCDC board. Before turning this afternoon's presentation over to Scott Solish, just wanted to note quickly that there's been one quality of life meeting since the last directors meeting in March. The meeting was held on Tuesday, May 10th, and included some of the updates which the directors will be provided this afternoon. Wanted to note also that starting later this month, we expect there to be renovation work to occur on the Arena Plaza. The work will include renovations and repair to some of the pavers on the Arena Plaza and also some of the fixtures on the plaza. There will be continued access to the Atlantic Terminal subway station from the Arena Plaza with some slight modifications to access to the escalator or to the elevator, depending on the phasing of the work. And there will also be continued access to the plaza for pedestrian purposes and also for the arena operations. But again, sections of the plaza will be quadrant off given where the restoration work is along the plaza. And that work is expected to commence later this month and be carried out through September with updates provided to the community accordingly. A notice has already gone out and additional updates, if necessary, will be provided to the community. Wanted to note also, as it relates to Site 5, which is the portion of the project located across from the Barclays Center with the former Modell's and PC Richards site, that there are no current updates. Once we have details that can be shared with the directors, we'll be sure to provide an update accordingly. That being said, I'll pause to take any questions from the directors on what I've just shared, and if not, I'll turn it over to Scott Solish, representing the development team, to provide an update on the construction activity at the site.
Hi, everyone. Trinell Gabe. My question is the quality of life meetings. Do the directors have to be a part of that meeting?
The directors are welcome to participate in the quality of life meeting. However, we run into an issue if we have more than a majority of the directors participate in the meeting. It then becomes subject to the open meetings law, and we'd have to make sure that it's webcast and that there's record and notice of the meeting. So we just ask that if directors are interested in attending a quality of life meeting, that they send me a note so that we are aware, or if you see the meeting details on the website and you're interested in participating and you do join, if for some reason there happens to be more than the majority of the currently appointed directors on, I may just send a note to ask that one or two directors leave the meeting, and I can provide an update on what was discussed, either via the quality of life meeting notes or an update via the presentation that was given. So it's not required, but you're welcome to attend because it is a public meeting.
Oh, okay, it's a public meeting, so it's for the community. That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
I have a question. This is Ethel Tyus. May I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please, go ahead.
This is Ethel Tyus asking, I just want to understand, I had assumed that the quality of life meetings were open to the general public. I personally find them very informative. So Toby, maybe I misunderstood what you said about.
Apologies, let me clarify. So
thank you.
You're correct that the quality of life meeting is open to the general public. The meeting information is distributed to the community and also posted on the ESD website. The meeting details are. However, as it relates to the participation or the attendance of AYCDC directors, because the meeting's subject matter is the Atlantic Yards project, if we have more than a majority of the directors on, so if, for example, there's currently 10 or 11 appointed directors to the AYCDC. If we have more than 6 or 7 directors that participate in the quality of life meeting, it then triggers a requirement that the meeting be applicable under the requirements of the open meetings law. So we would have had to make sure that the meeting was like being webcasted and being available on ESD's website. And so my specific response and details is related to the idea of if we have more than a majority of specifically the AYCDC directors in the meeting, not related to whether or not it's available to the general public to attend.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I'll turn it over to Scott Solish to discuss the current construction activity at the site. And then if there are other questions that may come up, we can discuss them after Scott's presentation. So Scott?
Thanks, Toby.
Hi, good afternoon, directors, and thank you, Toby. Just give me 1 second to get myself organized here, and I will begin. 1 moment. Sorry about the delay, and thank you very much. Toby, can you do you have control of the screen, or should I post?
No, the presentation has already been shared with the directors and also posted on the ESD website. So you may just run through your presentation without advancing the slides.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you again, directors, and welcome new directors to the meeting. I'm Scott Solish. I'm the Executive Vice President of Development for Greenland USA, overseeing the Pacific Park project. It's nice to be with you over Zoom today. Again, thank you for having me. I wanted
Scott, wait just a second before you begin. Do we have members of the public watching the Zoom feed? We can't see them, but because I think
can you please let us know if you see members of the public watching the feed?
Because I think if there are people who are watching, and if Scott, you're going to be referring to anything from the presentation that was circulated, it'd be best if we could put that up on the screen. Sorry to.
The presentation has also been posted on ESD's website and is available with the meeting details as well.
All right, well, that helps if people have.
This is good.
ability to do that.
If it's helpful at all, I see that I have the ability to share my screen, and I'm willing to share the presentation for everyone if it's helpful to the group. Okay.
It'd be great if you could do that.
So Scott, you can just tell me when you want me to flip the screen. Just give me 1 second. Does everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Thanks,
good,
Gib.
good, thanks.
Thanks, Gib. Much appreciated. We just go to the next slide. Great. Just a quick construction update on behalf of all the development happening at Pacific Park. 2 buildings are that have been built as part of the project are now, one is 100% complete. That is 662 Pacific Street, which is B15. So that's the project built on Pacific Street, kind of a block through project from Pacific to Dean on 6th Avenue. And that has the, what will be the new Department of Education middle school that the SCA is currently working on. So that building is completed. And then across the street, down the street, 18 6th Avenue, also known as B4 under the project documents. That project is near completion. We've gotten several temporary certificates of occupancy for the residential floors, and residential leasing on both the market rate and affordable units is ongoing. the market rate is being done through our leasing team, and the affordable housing lease up is done through the HPD lottery process with our affordable housing partner, Metropolitan Housing Association, with Ismini Spiliotis. So those projects, I would like to say, are basically complete. There's no, at B15, there's no additional construction except for the build out of the school being done by the SCA. And at 18 6th Avenue, we're near completion. The projects you see on the screen here are what we're.
Just before you move on to, when is the school projected to be ready?
I don't have an updated schedule from them. It's.
But it's not for the coming school year.
It won't be for the coming school year. They're just, the core and shell and a little bit more than that was finished and turned over to the SCA, and they're working on the build out of the actual of the school facilities themselves. So they have not given me a final date of when they could be open, because they don't open schools in the middle of a school year. So it depends on their construction schedule, and obviously everything going on in the world changes people's schedules quite regularly. So I'll let them answer, but they do have control of it, and they are moving ahead with their build out.
This is Gibb. Sorry to interrupt, but I believe it was last carried on the SCA's capital schedule as 2024, as September of 24.
And just a reminder of how population of the school, our expected number of students.
I believe it's 600 to 700 student capacity, and it's going to be a middle school. And that's determined by the Department of Education. So we, it's not anything that we have any say over in terms of the developer.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you. So, and then what you see here are B12 and B13. These are two projects being developed by TF Cornerstone under the master plan project documents. They are topped out, and they are installing windows and working on the residential fit out of these spaces, and they are expected to be complete in the spring of 2023. So this will be another approximately 800 apartments with an affordable component, as well as the completion of the open space on block 1129. So once these are completed, it will also lead to the completion of the first complete 2.3 acre-ish amount of open space spanning block 1129 between Dean and Pacific Street, stretching from Vanderbilt to Carlton. That project work is still ongoing, but again, expected to be completed spring 2023. Gib, will you go to the next slide?
Sorry, can I just ask the question? I had my hand raised.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I don't know.
Please.
I see it now.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I didn't see it.
Sorry, no. Tamara here. You said there's an affordable component. Can you just either let us know the percentage of that, just so I'm trying to keep track?
It's somewhere between 25 and 30% of the total units will be affordable.
Sorry, Scott, just a question on that for me too. You said between 25 and 30%. Does that mean they have not yet elected which option of Affordable New York they're going to take?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for the TF Cornerstone team, but I believe that's the case. They weren't able to join this afternoon, but I will certainly share that question with them, and we'll get the director's answer from the TF development team.
Just to piggyback, what's the time frame on when they would need to make that decision?
Yeah, I have the same question. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have I think it's before they commence the lottery process, right? So,
well, maybe when they give an update, they can provide that information.
Yeah, I'll include that as well.
My understanding from talking with Mr. Stein is that they're expecting occupancy in the spring of next year.
Right. Okay, Gib, will you jump to the next slide? Thank you. I think these are just some additional images from the site. So there you can see B4 on the left and the arena block on the right. So you can see the new installation the arena did with the artist over the subway entrance. B4, 18 6th Avenue is the taller building on the left, with B15 and B3, the smaller buildings over the roof of the arena in the center, and 461 Dean Street, otherwise known as B2 on the right. You can jump to the next slide. And just another image of B4. I guess these are into my the initial slides. Okay, thank you this is, you can stop here, thank you. This is an aerial shot of block 1120. So the road on the left is the Carlton Avenue Bridge that was built as part of the project. Atlantic Avenue is in the foreground with the cars at the traffic light moving east down Atlantic Avenue. Pacific and the Newswalk building to the upper portion of the building moving south. And what you see here is block 1120, which is spanning from Carlton to 6th between Pacific and Atlantic. And you see here the completed rail yard that was built as part of the project. So this is where the first phase of platform development is about to begin. The platform, for those that aren't completely familiar with the project, either spans from 6th Avenue on the west, all the way across Carlton Avenue to Vanderbilt on the east. And the first phase of platform will be built in this area, what we call block 1120. If you give, would you go to the next slide? It's really nice that you're helping me out here. I appreciate it. And work will primarily start in the B5 area, and we're hopeful that it'll start sometime in the next few weeks. And so what you see here is a significant amount of Long Island Railroad infrastructure that was built as part of the project. The two tracks at the top of the picture, one is what's called the drill track, and above that is what's called the lead track coming through the new West Portal Tunnel that we built, which helps trains go directly from Atlantic Avenue, pulling front ways into the yard around the bump sites, which is that mound of land at the very top of the picture that's cut off, and into the storage tracks underneath the Carlton Avenue Bridge in the block 1121 section of the platform and the yard. So this is the current conditions of block 1120. You can also see that we've pre-placed some footings and foundations. Some of the green sticking up straight up in the air is rebar. Those are pre-placed footings and foundations that we've done already to help expedite the beginning of the platform work. Gib, if you would go to the next slide.
Just before we advance, could I just ask a couple questions on this picture? Is it your view that the foundation and footing work you just described will be sufficient to qualify buildings B5, 6, and 7 for 421A under the current authorization?
No.
Okay, and so none of the three will qualify for 421A under the current authorization?
It's possible that B5 may have, but not the other ones.
Okay, well, the expiration is obviously Wednesday of next week. So when do you think it will be known whether you've qualified?
So the unique part of this is that the Affordable New York Plan, you don't certify until after the project is finished. So you don't know until the very end.
So you won't know if you're qualified maybe for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, we anticipate that we have, but obviously, it's not a developer discretion, right? It's you get approved by HPD.
Okay.
Is there some sort of filing that's done now to sort of make a record of the fact of how far you got with the B5 construction?
There is some, yes, I mean, there are some pre-certification work that can happen, but again, the way they changed the law, I'm not a tax attorney or an HPD.
Nor am I.
But they changed the law. The way it's always been described to me is that the old 421A law, you did kind of pre-register and get pre-accepted into the program. And then the Affordable New York plan, you don't go until after you've gotten all of your TCOs, and then you submit the paperwork. So there's no kind of pre-baking, right? You have to, there's a way to qualify under the law, which is the commencement of work by a date certain, which as Gib pointed to is this month. So we believe that this building would qualify, but again, it's also determined if you finish and get all of your TCOs by a certain date and meet other requirements of the program. So, you don't know until the end, but we believe that we've met the threshold to qualify under the existing program.
Dan, I don't know if this is out of order, but could I move that we request ESD to ask HPD to confirm that the threshold qualifications that Scott mentioned have been met for this building?
I mean, you can make that motion. Is there a second?
I second. This is Ethel Tias.
Okay.
Let's keep the record.
Okay, so then motion has been made to ask, as I understand it, to ask the ESD staff to make inquiry of HPD as to whether the construction progress on this site has met the requirements for qualifying for the 421A existing 421A program. Is that the correct statement of the motion?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye, Ethel Tias.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's Debbie Royce. I'll note that for the record. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, you can proceed, Scott.
I'm sorry, I have just one other quick one on this slide. I see that we see a line of cars that's actually parked on the sidewalk on Pacific Street there. I just want to confirm those cars will no longer be able to park there once construction starts on B5 in earnest, and the platform and B5 in earnest. Is that correct?
Well, can you let me go to my next slide and then I'll walk through.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you. So this is something that's been shared with community members and wanted to share with the directors today. So this is what we plan to install to support construction of the platform, which will lead to the next phases of vertical development. This is what we call an MPT, the construction fence that will go around the entire block. Gib, if you would go to the next slide. So this is just that same slide in more detail. A few things I'd just like to point out. I'll start where Gib asked. Yes, that row of cars that we have been combat parking on Pacific Street, storing their cars there, will have to find other places to store their vehicles. I've walked with the 78th precinct because it was my understanding that some of the force that works out of the precinct does park there. They made the point that the majority of these cars are not related to the 78th precinct. They are members of the public. Yeah, but I have spoken with the 78th precinct about this. But yes, these cars will have to be relocated. We will be putting a construction fence up on all four sides. And if you can see in detail, pedestrians will be directed to other sides, other parts of the sidewalk where pedestrian traffic will be restricted within this fence. So on 6th Avenue, that means that pedestrians will be directed to the west side of the street where the newly restored sidewalk outside of 18th 6th Avenue is now open. Those construction fences on Atlantic Avenue are also in the process of being prepared to be removed, and that sidewalk along the north part of B4 on Atlantic Avenue has also been will also be restored and reopened. On Atlantic Avenue, pedestrians will be directed to the north side of the street at either Carlton or 6th Avenue. And on Pacific Street, they'll be directed to the south side of the street where the sidewalk is fully open. And on Carlton to the east side of the street on the east side of the Carlton Avenue Bridge. The one thing to note is that on 6th Avenue, there's a small driveway there that is for the Long Island Railroad's ramp. They use that to bring vehicular cars in and out of, and trucks in and out of the yard for Long Island Railroad employees and maintenance crews that need to come in and out of the yard in their car. So that is how they come in there. The main gates for the MPT will be on Atlantic Avenue. There's one at the corner of 6th and Atlantic. And there's also one at the corner of Carlton and Atlantic. There also will be secondary gates on Pacific Street where trucks that need to enter that zone can enter on both Carlton and 6th. But the primary entry and access points will be on Atlantic Avenue.
And approximately how long do you project that construction fence will be in place?
We project that it'll be there for approximately 36 to 40 months.
I think we can anticipate that will become a subject at quality of life meetings, but we'll deal with the issues as they come.
Yeah, I mean, the positive thing as we put this fence up is that the other fences in this area are coming down. So the fence work in this area will be limited to block 1120. The same thing outside of B12 and B13 on Dean Street as those projects complete in spring of 23. Those fences are also coming down. So construction will be very focused in this area, despite the breadth.
And that means that parking will be kind of restored in those places?
Yes. I mean, there's
all right. So then there should be some balancing out.
Correct. As well as there's an additional, a significant additional garage that will open at B12, B13.
Oh, right, of course.
Will offer additional parking spaces.
If I may, I just wanted to make a note that beginning in the fall of this year, the New York City Department of Design and Construction is going to begin a water and sewer replacement project that is going to run from it's going to run on Dean Street from 6th Avenue to Vanderbilt Avenue, and then north on Vanderbilt Avenue to Pacific Street, which is around, obviously, the Atlantic Yard site. I'm actually living next to such a water and sewer project on my street right now, and I can say it's very disruptive, but my street is not nearly as dense as Dean Street. And this project is going to be underway on Dean Street at exactly the time that B12 and B13 are going to have move-ins. And at the time that the internal build out for Chelsea Piers is going to be happening. And at the time, as Scott pointed out, that an additional 400 car capacity is going to be added to the garage there for a total of 700 cars. And there's now a significant problem with traffic backup at that garage. And the cars that are now parking on Pacific Street, on the north side of Pacific Street, combat style, will have to find a new place to park. So all of that is going to make conditions very, very challenging over the next several years. The DDC project is also expected to go on for 2 years. So there will be plenty to hear about in quality of life meetings over the next couple of years, I promise.
There always is. Any more questions about the MPT?
Well, just on that, I mean, has DDC coordinated with your company and on that project? I mean, in terms of the timing, et cetera?
No, I mean, they do it on their own schedule and process. And none of the buildings are directly connecting into the new infrastructure that's being installed. All the buildings on, well, it is improving the overall neighborhood network. All the buildings on block 1129 connect into existing infrastructure that we already restored or improved in the Pacific Street area. So it is a neighborhood enhancement that supports, the overall development and growth of the Prospect Heights area. I'm not a sewer and water main expert, but the buildings don't directly connect into them. They connect into Pacific Street of
Okay.
that we already installed previously.
I would point out that DDC's project description specifically cites the buildings at Atlantic Yards as part of the justification for the project.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. Gib, is there any more questions on the MPT? I can always, and it's relatively straightforward, but it will be a big change to the block. Gib, would you?
Excuse me, this is Ethel Tias. I have a couple of questions. Is there, it seems like there would be some utility in asking the other agencies whose projects touch and concern, as one might say, the Atlantic Yards efforts. At least one or two people who can address the overlaps and interconnections that Gib just went through. Thank God Gib is here. And I hope you'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Of course. Gib, would you jump to the next slide? So I just wanted to give a very kind of high level summary of what the first phase is actually going to look like. So again, almost all of the platform work, when we talk about the building of the roof over the existing yard that we've already built, happens below street level. So, well, you would have to, you'll have to look from above to see what's happening. But this is just to give a sense of what the first phases of work are really going to be looking like. We'll start in the B5 area, and what you see in green are new columns that need to be installed to support the roof that will be poured overhead. So we'll be working in the yard between the existing tracks, working with the Long Island Railroad in terms of safely having a labor force in there, getting the trains in and out of the yards so that the railroad can maintain its full schedule, but a safe working environment, a controlled working environment to begin pouring these and installing these additional shear walls and columns that you see here in green. Now you'll ask what the area in purple is. I mentioned before that there's an area that we call the bump, which is existing terra firma, that also has to be excavated. So that area in purple is just the bump area north of the lead track that we will also be excavating prior to installing the columns and retaining walls along Atlantic Avenue. Gib, if you would go to the next slide. And then once that's in there, we start to pour and install roof on top of those columns, literally putting a roof over the yard. So as the columns are installed, we start to bring in additional materials and cover the entire thing. As we complete this section, the same process is then repeated moving from west to east. So we're going to be installing the columns, putting the roof in, and then moving west to east. This is what we call the B5 site. Then it would go to the B6 site and then the B7 site, excavating the bump as well and installing that necessary foundation work to install both the ground floor slabs of the buildings as well as the roof over the Long Island Railroad's infrastructure in the yard. Gib, would you go
just to understand this, it looks like the green portion, at least in the middle, is sloping downward from, is it 6th Avenue, I guess?
It's just the strangeness of the cartoon. I apologize. It's very hard to kind of graphically show this in a clean way. There's a natural slope out there, but there's no significant slope.
So that roof, then
we'll get to
the roof sections that we're seeing here are flat.
Yes, it's a flat section.
I see.
Yeah.
That you then build on top of.
Gabe, would you go to the next slide?
Sure, but may I ask just one question? What's the relationship in terms of the contractor labor to do all of this? Is it the same? You have a contractor is it two scopes of work, one for the platform and the other for the building, or is it done by the same firm?
It can be done by the same firm and it can be done by different firms. So we think of the platform contract as a single contract done by one firm, and then the vertical buildings can be done by different firms through a segregation of those teams. Because once, if you let me get to the next slide, I can explain. So this is essentially what you see here, right? The roof is now installed, and then you're going to start to go vertical with the building elements on top of that. And so, this roof deck is essentially vacated by the platform team as they continue to work further down the site. And you'll see everything in light gray surrounded. That's the outline of the B5 building. So then the B5 vertical team can come in and have that area available to themselves to start that vertical construction, while the platform team continues to work further west to east in the B6 and B7 areas. So eventually there'll be building going up on B5, B6, and B7. The roof is installed, and the platform team is then still working on the completion of the platform by working underneath the deck, underneath the platform roof, installing the final mechanical systems, plumbing systems, fire protection, sprinkler systems, ventilation systems, all in coordination with the Long Island Railroad's project management team. So this is really just to give a sense of kind of process. We'll build sections of deck, and as we're going vertical, we'll be working underneath the platform itself on the completion of the MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire prevention systems before we can turn it over to the railroad. The thing sticking up, one other thing, that thing sticking up through the middle of the site, that's the roof over that ramp I mentioned. So that ramp and that driveway remain in place. We build B5 with this kind of incorporated through the ground floor. So it's a very tight, complex site that's been fully designed and vetted through design professionals and signed off on by the railroad under their own processes. But that driveway and that ramp remain in place and become kind of an enclosed tunnel for the railroad's sole purpose of driving vehicles in and out of the yard.
Oh, so it's not feeding into any kind of parking garage or anything?
Oh, no. It's a private.
All right. Railroad. And is it part of the load-bearing element of the?
It's all incorporated into the system, but the building doesn't load off the ramp.
And the railroad have a 24-hour access to that.
Yes, they have staff there through their own security and fire prevention, fire watch teams. The railroad is tightly monitoring and securely monitoring their own spaces. And then if you flip to the next slide, it's a big leap, but eventually this is what the completed block will look like. So you see B4 to the left, 186th Avenue. B5 is the building that steps down with a series of terraces, with B6 and B7 to the right and the open space surrounding it. So this will be the next significant section of park. And there's a lot to do. It's a big project, obviously, but it's an exciting part of the project. It's exciting to begin work on the first phase of the platform after the completion of the yard and getting this designed and ready to go. So we're excited to get this started. It's very, I know it seems like a lot of construction, but this has always been a critical part of getting the housing and open space built, and we're excited to get moving on it.
So it's a total of 3 buildings on the deck.
Yes,
and
then 3 more on the next section across the street.
Oh, okay.
6 in total.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but what's the anticipated completion date of the entire project?
We think sometime probably in the next 8 to 9 years.
Thank you.
Keep me busy.
Yeah,
It's my
it looks
ninth.
completely unrecognizable. So,
Hey, Scott, thank you for that presentation. Are there any other questions from the directors for Scott or related to the quality of life meeting?
I do have several questions, if I could ask for the director's patience. Scott, I'm going to just ask about something we had spoken about in our board meeting of March of last year, which is 421A. As we discussed, that's going to expire next week. I was at a different meeting in May when you mentioned that the provision of the remaining affordable housing was dependent upon 421A. Doesn't appear to be getting reauthorized now. The legislature ended session without reauthorization. I want to make sure we're all clear on this. It is my understanding from the Master Development Agreement that there is no dependency on any financing or tax abatement for completion of the project's affordable housing commitment. Is that your understanding as well?
I think there's specific things in the document that cover the availability of financing for affordable housing and also project financing.
There are, but none of them stipulate that you must have tax subsidy, you must have subsidies or abatements to complete your commitment. Do you feel otherwise?
No, I mean, I think the document speaks for itself.
Okay, I want to highlight for the directors. I mean, this is the affordable housing commitment must be completed by the end of May 2025. That's less than 3 years away. Scott, do you envision completion? How do you envision that requirement to be met in 3 years?
I think we're building as hard as we can, and we've built as hard as we can and as fast as we can, given the conditions in the city and the world over the last 10 years. So I think we're at a very exciting point now. We've done a lot of construction over the last several years and continue to deliver on our agreements. And as I just outlined, we're just about to commence the next phase of development that allows us to build the next phases of buildings, and we're eager to get them done.
Okay, but do you have milestones identified now that would show that the remaining, there's 877 apartments left in those 3 buildings we were looking at a moment ago that have to be done in less than 3 years. Do you have milestones identified for achieving that goal in 3 years?
What do you mean by milestones given?
Well, things that have to be done at a certain point in time in order to make that date, like completion of the platform, financing, everything else. I mean, will we be here in another year, kind of with the same report about the opportunity to finish and complete the affordable housing by the deadline, or are there interim steps that you'll be able to report on?
I mean, I think the interim steps that you'll see are the actual progress in the project site, right? I mean, so.
Okay. I'd next like to ask about a report that was out last week about S&P and Moody's downgrading the debt of Greenland Holdings, and S&P stating that they felt Greenland Holdings, which is the parent of Greenland USA, was at risk of default. Can you comment on the effect of default of your parent company on your company, the Greenland USA, and what impact that would have on Greenland Forest City Partners as developer of this project?
Yeah, it's not going to change anything. So we're continuing to do exactly as we've done, which is continue to invest substantial amounts in the project and continue to execute as we've had since we came into the project in 2014.
That's good to hear. The possibility is, though, if there's a bankruptcy, you could have creditors coming after any assets that Greenland has. Are the assets in the United States protected from creditors who are the bondholders in China coming after you guys?
Okay, Scott, if you can answer that question, but it sounds like something that may be beyond your purview, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna go into.
We're not going to get into the nuances of bankruptcy law here.
Right. So all I can say is that, we have done nothing but invest substantial amounts of company equity, as well as significant loans to get this project built. Throughout this, whatever the conditions may be, old 421, new 421A, COVID, post-COVID. And we're going to continue to do it. It's our commitment. We've shared that commitment with everyone. We're sharing it with you as the directors today. We are eager, as I just said, to move forward with the next significant phase of this project, which is not building housing, it's building the capacity to put the housing there in the form of a platform, as well as the purchase of the air rights from the Long Island Railroad. So we're just continuing with our commitments and our obligations, and that's I'm here representing that to you as director.
I appreciate that, and I'm
yeah,
not.
I think I get it. I think I've tried to answer as directly as I can in my.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just want to make it clear. The reason I'm asking is because my read of the MDA is that if there was a bankruptcy and if there was a proceeding, anything entered against Greenland Forest City Partners, all development, that would be a default under the agreement, and basically all new development would stop. That is.
But there's no one.
I think in the situation when we find ourselves needing to address that worst case scenario, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I think we've gotten the assurance from Scott that his team has continued their commitments to the development of the project and are excited to start work on the platform, which would lead to the future development of the towers over the platform.
I'm excited about that too. I just wanted the other directors to understand the same thing I understand about the development agreements. My last question is about the urban room. As far as I can see, the urban room is still a part of this project, is it not? It's in the project plan.
That's correct.
Okay. According to the MDA.
I'm sorry, could you just explain quickly what?
Sure. I mean, Toby, would you like to explain?
Sure. So the current general project plan, as folks might have heard us talk about previously, allows for there to be the development of what is known as B1. B1 is a tower that was envisioned to be built over what we now know as the Arena Plaza and over the current subway platform. Right. And part of the base for that would have been an urban room, or serving as a form of a glass enclosure that connected B1, the what we know as the plaza, the subway entrance, and also the opening to the arena. As has been discussed in the past, the developer has expressed interest in transferring the bulk from B1 over to Site 5 or other parts of the project. And so there is interest, of course, in taking away the requirement for the urban room, right, and instead memorializing the Barclays Center Plaza for what it is, especially given its prominence in the community since the summer of 2020 and a lot of the civil protests and actions that we've seen there.
So, but up to this point,
all right, I understand. I had a feeling it was connected somewhat to that issue, but I didn't.
But up to this point,
right?
Toby,
but at this point, so the GPP still, the current project documents still require or allow for there to be B1 and also the urban room. So that's still what's on paper for the project.
And as far as you understand, the deadline for completing the urban room has not changed, has it?
There have been no changes to the project documents related to B1 or the urban room.
Okay, well, my read of the MDA is that the urban room was supposed to have been completed on the 25th of May of this year. Is that the case?
There have been no changes to the project documents, and as I've noted, there's been public discussion about memorializing the plaza and also transferring the bulk from what would have been B1 to other sites of the project. So what specifically are you getting at? If I'm not following.
So the urban room had a deadline of the outside phase 1 completion date, which was 12 years of the anniversary of the effective date, which was May 25 of 2010. So it should have been completed on May 25 of last month. If it's not being completed is a default under the MDA, and it carries liquidated damages. The liquidated damages are $10 million to be paid out over 12 months, beginning with the first payment in this month of $200,000.
Given the discussions that we've had related to the Arena Plaza and also B1 and transferring the bulk over to Site 5 at this time, there's been no discussion about a default under the project agreement.
But those obligations still stand in the project agreement.
There have been no changes to the project documents. Yes, that's correct.
All right, I think we need ESD to clarify that then for us, because the project documents call for that urban room to have been completed last month and provide for liquidated damages as a remedy for default. I'd like to make a motion that we.
Thank you for, I don't think, we don't need a motion, Gib. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'll circle back with the team to review the documents. I think we can all note that the urban room has not been developed and there's been no actions taken towards the development of the urban room. So I'll follow up with the team and get some details with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, Trinell, just a quick question. What exactly is the urban room?
Sure. So the urban room, Trinell, is what would have been built on what we now know as the Arena Plaza, the open space that connects the entry to the Barclays Center and also access from the Atlantic Terminal subway station. So the current general project plan allows for there to be a tower built over the plaza and what the subway entrance is, and there would have been a form of a glass enclosure that's described as the urban room in the project documents.
So does the urban room consist of traffic for people to walk through, or is it like a?
Yes, yeah, it would allow for public access from the subway entrance, from the arena, and from what would have been B1.
There's no housing.
But again, the idea is to preserve what, the plaza has kind of taken on a life of its own, as we've all seen over the last few years. And so to preserve that open space, preserve that relationship with the community and the utility of the plaza for various civic purposes.
I don't know that that's exchangeable for the urban room, quite frankly. The urban room is an interior atrium, and it was designed for public gatherings and of a kind that would be different than would take place in the plaza for the arena.
Noted. I mean, there have been various changes to the design elements of the project. And so, as I described earlier, there's been conversation related to moving away from taking away the bulk that would have been on B1 to either Site 5 or other aspects of the project site, and the urban room definitely is part of that. So like I'd noted, I'll circle back with the team on the point that you'd raised with regards to the default considerations for the transaction documents, and we'll get back to you accordingly.
I do want to point out the urban room is a public benefit of the Atlantic Yards project, and this board is responsible for overseeing public commitments of the Atlantic Yards project. So if there are conversations going on about replacing that as a public benefit that are not being shared with the members of this board, I'm not sure I understand why that wouldn't be happening.
I'd like to clarify, because I think you're misrepresenting what I just stated. There's been public discussions in the past where it's noted, right? We've talked about this in various meetings where the idea would be to transfer the bulk from B1 over to Site 5 or other aspects of the project locations. And so looking at what has become the Arena Plaza and noting that the urban room is part of what would be the base or have a relationship between B1 and the arena itself is what I'm referring to. There aren't any conversations that the AYCDC has been left out of or hasn't been represented. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Nor have there been any, nor have there been any agreements, right, with respect to actually effectuating that transfer, I assume.
There's been no agreement related to the
No.
transfer of bulk from B1 to
Talking
Site
about
5
discussions.
or any general modifications to the general project plan.
Right.
We understand that the developer has interest and there is desire to look at the next phase of development at the project and at Site 5, but we have not put pen to paper related to the general project plan modifications.
And in fact, there was a period of time when there was an injunction against having any of those discussions.
That's correct,
That's right.
related to the Site 5 litigation between part of the development team,
Right.
Brookfield, which had acquired Forest City Ratner and PC Richards.
That litigation settled in October, though, and my
That's
understanding.
correct. We've noted the update with regards to the settlement of the litigation related to Site 5. We understand again that the developer has this interest in transferring bulk from B1 and looking at the development. And as I noted at the start of this meeting, actually, once we do have updates related to Site 5, we'll be sure to inform the directors and the public and talk about in detail what the next phase of development at the project would entail.
All right, well, I look forward to hearing what your understanding of the situation is with the deadline and for the urban room, and which is still a part of the project and has not been changed formally.
Thank you.
Right, so I think, yeah, so I think that when you talk to the team about it, I mean, it should include a discussion of doing whatever's necessary to preserve ESD's rights with respect to those aspects that Gib raised, those remedies, and you know, as long as nothing's been waived, we should be fine on that. Okay, was there further? Did Scott have anything further on that?
No, there are no other
not.
updates, I believe.
Yep, Gib, are you done with your questions?
My only other question is if there was any further update about the expectation for modification for Site 5, as you mentioned before, Toby.
There are no updates.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
No. Anybody else have any questions?
No, Chair Coomer, this is Ethel Tyus. I want to thank both Gib and yourself for being on top of this, and I hope that this will be on the agenda. A resolution for this question will be on the agenda for our next meeting. Thank you.
I mean, we can try, but if it needs to be ripe for some kind of resolution by that point. But certainly we'll continue to ask if there are updates and be sure that our role in the process is preserved.
I think it is right, Chair Coomer. I think it is right, and that's what I'm asking for is a examination of the record and a presentation at the next meeting. That's all I'm asking for. Just.
Yeah, thank you for that. We'll
okay.
be sure to provide continued updates on the project, both as it relates to any proposed modifications to the GPP, following up on Gib's inquiry with regards to the urban room, and also talking.
Yeah,
about
that issue sounds like one that we would want an update for at the next meeting.
Will do.
Okay.
Turn it over back to you, Daniel.
Okay, so was there anything further on the
No, nothing else.
quality of life issues or anything like that we should be aware of?
No, no other updates.
Okay. All right. So at this point, we would now normally proceed to public comments portion of the meeting. As noted earlier, no comments were received from the public. I'm going to exercise my prerogative as acting chair. Just if there are any people who came, you know, and were unaware of the deadline and and wish to make a public comment, they should make themselves known immediately. Otherwise, we're just going to proceed to a motion to adjourn.
So
As a
moved.
host. Okay. All right, then, assuming no opposition to that motion, I want to thank everyone for their participation and declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time.
Chair.
Bye.